Dumelang Sambanani, hello South Africa. A very warm welcome to Expressions. Now, we are coming to you all the way from KZN. Of course, we are on ground zero where we're going to be having important conversations pertaining to you as a young person, because this is definitely the place for you to air your views. I'm your host, Jacqueline Mapala.
And I'm your host, Umxolisi Wagamasango. Now, as you can see, we're still keeping safe, Jackie, wearing our masks, and of course, we've just sanitized as well, keeping our distance. But one thing remains the same on Expressions. We continue to have very important conversations with the youth of the country. Namhlanje is no different as we ask, are we ever going to overcome the challenges faced by students in institutions of higher learning?
Oh, that's a very important question. And what is so great about today's episode is the fact that we have those very students who are actually going to schools here in Durban on the ground, and we're going to be having those conversations, because at some point we definitely need to come with solutions, because year in, year out, we see protest in and protest out, and we want to find out, is there a way forward? So let's get this conversation started.
Let's do so. Do participate again now in Kundlanza to Zokumanas on Facebook as well as on Twitter. Let's get it going.
Let's get it going. The question that we are asking is whether there are any solutions to some of the challenges and issues that are faced by students in institutions of higher learning. And of course, to help me unpack this very important conversation, I am joined by Uluyanda Ciliza, who is SASCO coordinator of MUT. I'm also joined by Thabo Cheme, who is also from SASCO and he's a convener from DUT. And I'm also joined by Ulungile Mgazi, who is from UNISA, and she is the chairperson of the SRC. Ulungile, maybe let me start with you. I mean, the question really is, aren't these protests supposed to have ended? So we want to find out from you, as a representative of UNISA students, what is going on the ground? Why are you still protesting?
All right, thank you. The protest should have ended long time ago, because as student leaders, we do have solutions and we provide solutions. But by the look of things, management do not pay much attention on the solutions that are brought on the table. The issues that we are facing as the UNISA students, you remember that early January and February, we were on the protest. But now the campus is open, yet issues were not resolved, because we have returning students that were doing higher certificates and they completed their higher certificates. But now the institution is saying, no, we do not have a space for you. However, the university was able to accommodate new applicants. But students that are already on the system completed their higher certificates and they are ready to migrate to their diplomas or degree. The institution is saying we do not have a space. As student leaders, with the assistance of our own student Black Lawyers Association, we have taken the matter to the court to say the institution should be able to accommodate the students. And then we won the case, but the institution do not want to comply with the order of the court. As a result, where we are sitting, those students, they are still excluded. And the main problem is that if you exclude those students now, they are going to have a gap year, because they need to start afresh and apply as a new applicant. That means their NSFAS, whatever funding that they had, it will be forfeited. Now they have to start again. And that is the problem, because it might happen that when they come back next year, NSFAS will exclude them and say you don't qualify anymore, yet they are still using NSFAS. And then I think the second problem that we have, it's the issue of NSFAS. I think that one affects all the institution. But with UNISA, I always say it's more different, because we are the institution of the ODL. However, checking the generation that is in, I think we still need to deal with our policy, because it doesn't speak to what is happening at the ground. Students that are using NSFAS, now they are receiving SMSs to say, you must choose between a laptop and a book allowances.
Yeah.
Since we are on the online, you cannot be told that you must choose between a laptop and the book, because you need both.
Yeah.
You need a book and then you need a laptop to write your examination and stuff.
So Lungile, and I guess the situation is extremely dire, especially now with COVID and online learning, for students to be forced to choose between one and the other. For you, Leanne, what is going on at MUT? What are your issues? What are you protesting about?
Ngibingelele. Firstly, allow me to give a brief background of what led us to where we are right now in MUT. On the 12th of March, we sent a memorandum to the executive management of the university regarding the registration process. In our memorandum, we were proposing, we had also solutions. It was not a memorandum of demands also alone. It has solutions. The issue of registration, because we foreseen these problems, that the registration was not properly planned. Before the registration begins, there were students, while the management were pushing for registration, there were students who were still writing their supplementaries. And the results of those supplementaries, those students need them for financial assistance. Now, we sent the memorandum and the management responded saying that no, they are considering our solutions, but up until today, none of those solutions have been implemented till such a time where the matter was taken to the street, because our demands were saying that there must be free concessions. Students must not be subjected in those concessions. We're saying that a student who owe from 1 rand to 10,000, that student must be able to register for free, considering the fact that there was COVID-19. So our parents lost jobs, and the majority of MUT students falls within the bottom 90 of South African households. They are not affording education, and even those who are cash payers, they are not cash payers because they afford, they are cash payers by default. Some of them, they are still waiting to appeal.
Yeah. So, I mean, and again, you know, we don't want to make this issue sound like we're nonchalant and unfazed by it. Tabo, when the criticism out there is that students just like to protest, you actually don't want to be in the classrooms. How would you respond to that type of sentiment?
No, thanks. In fact, let us dismiss that outrightly. Protesting is very risky. You get criminal record. It's tiring because when you protest, you plan, you do all those things. You end up having qualification that you can't use because you have criminal record. You get arrested, you get expelled, you get suspended in the university. So it is not true. No one likes to protest. But the problem that we have is that we as student leaders always are able to diagnose and find solutions to problems, and we provide solutions. The problem is that the management is arrogant. Management don't want to take solutions from students or student leaders up until there is a crisis. That crisis, when it goes on the mid, then it is when they start trying to listen to students. There is no student leader who like to protest, because protesting is very difficult and it's very risky, and it's not true. Like, we all want to go to classes. We're here. By the way, no one has came to campus to join politics. We have joined student politics because of the condition that we have faced and we were subjected to when we were registered student. We did not come here to join politics. So it is not true. No one likes to strike. We strike because we're trying to get the management on the table. We are trying to pursue the management that they must implement a solution, because we are always proactive on issues. We identify them as early as possible. And we, a year before, were able to sit with the management and say, we're anticipating these problems next year. These are the solutions that we're proposing on the registration. For example, in DUT, we have a registration that is centralized. DUT have 7 campuses, but you centralize registration. There are 6 campuses saying decentralize registration. Allow campus faculties to deal with their own registration so that the process can move smoothly. But because the management of DUT want to pursue and paint this picture in the society that they are the most advanced university that is able to deal with technology while they are failing, there are technical glitches. As we speak today, DUT when it comes to first years, we have registered less than 50% of the enrollment that was targeted.
Yeah.
Hence, you've seen last week there was a fake news. Then all students, more than 5,000 students, were gathered in one venue, even breaking the COVID regulations. The university became a super spreader of COVID-19 because management is arrogant. They don't want to listen to solutions that are being provided by student leadership and paint a picture that we want to strike while they close doors for us when we're providing solutions.
Yeah, I wonder if there's actually a simple question. I mean, I'll come back to you a little bit later in the show. I think, I mean, the question here is the management of these, tertiary institutions just not listening to students? I mean, what needs to happen in order for us to be able to get to a point where we no longer have a culture of protest that is happening year in and year out? We continue with this very important conversation. You're watching Expressions. We'll be back.
Now, are we ever going to find solutions to the challenges faced by students in institutions of higher learning? Now, that's the big question. Namhlanje Expressions. We're not live, but we're still coming to you from eThekwini, Gwelga Banana, all sunny today, and I'm joined by young people from various institutions of higher learning. Welcome to the show once again, guys. So, I just want to know from you guys, since the very first wave of this big movement by young people took ground in 2015 in the country, why is it that we're still facing such challenges where there's always something that must happen in our institutions of higher learning in 2021? What is it that we can't get right?
Maybe we have to agree with what Thabo has said from DUT, that as student and student leadership is not within our interest to be in the forefront of protesting in our campuses, but it's the conditions and environment that dictates to us to take issues on the street. Number one, probably if we are going to be able to have a management that is not arrogant and the one that is going to listen to student issues that are raised by leaders, we are going to be able to have to start our academic year peacefully, moving forward, having an academic calendar that is not going to have protest. And also, on the issue that has led to us having protesters in our campuses, we must know that the issue of NSFAS, funding for NSFAS, is amongst issues that led to students being protesting on campuses. Because the NSFAS itself is saying that for now is cutting budget to fund students. You will also find out that there are parents who have lost their job due to COVID-19, and most of our students on campuses, they rely on the funding for NSFAS. And also, the only solution for us to stop protesting is that NSFAS must continuously increase budget. The government of this country must be in a position of funding free education. The call for free education has been made since 2014, since 2015, as we have been said, but the government has been neglecting in funding free education. Only that what the government does that when it's COVID-19, it comes with a COVID-19 relief fund to fund people who are unemployed, but not being in a position to fund free education. So as this student leadership, we are calling for government to intervene in funding the call for free education. The country has the money to fund free education.
Well, my issue is that I feel like we're going in riddles, always meeting up and talking about these issues, but whereby we don't have the minister to answer for himself or the Department of NSFAS. We may raise issues here, we may protest on the streets, but it's unfair whereby we don't have someone to actually tell us why are we going through this? Why is it that we can't be funded? Why is it that we've been cut down and everything? So I think it would be a much greater effort for them to come out and actually speak to us and align everything and say, hey, we have this budget for this reason, we cannot fund this amount of students, and this is why we're cutting down. And at UNISA, we have a crisis. Even our campus is not friendly towards us. We have to walk a distance from the taxi ranks. We have to walk a distance from the train stations, and it's not even safe for us to do so. So there's a lot of things that we would like to actually sit down, even the management from UNISA, and they tell us, why can't we get all of this? Maybe we're just protesting and we're not understanding why they can't do it. Well, we're here, we're willing to listen. SRCs are working hard. It's very hard to go back to the students and they tell you that I'm not funded, I've been rejected. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna put you in a pile of a list and I'm gonna fight for you. Well, I don't know what I'm fighting against. So if that could happen, that would be very, very much better than what we're doing now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So when we go to our Twitter page, that is expressions_10, we're getting Usnazo who says students have been fighting for their rights even before this. It is not the first time. There was even hashtag fees must fall a few years ago and people were arrested. I'm sorry to sound insensitive, but I would rather earn my weekly wages than to be on the streets. But here's also an interesting point in Mbugeli Lapekaya. By this time that we're having this conversation right now, we also know Uguti of different institutions, and since 2010, about more than 120 SA students have passed their courses but can't afford to settle their fees and are yet to receive their transcripts as well as degrees. By this time, as we're having this conversation, we have TUT about 125 students owing about 4.4 billion. Here in MUT, about 3,870 students owing about 75 million rands. That's a very lot of money.
I think as you are here, we have the same grievances, and the only solution in this is that the universities must provide students with the AOD, because especially last year, our students didn't perform very well because of the lockdown, the COVID-19. We were all scared what will happen to us. We were not ready even for the exams. So most of students didn't perform very well. And I think it will be fair to all of us if they allow us to fill in the AOD so that our students will get back to the system and continue with their academics.
Thank you for that, Londi. And of course, echoing some of her sentiments here on social media, as Pelele says, of course, we've been dealing with a pandemic, and this side, we also have to deal with the burden of paying fees. The struggle of the black child is never ending. Mbugeli Lapekaya, what do you have to say about the conversation that we're having? Are we ever going to find solutions for our challenges that are faced by students in institutions of higher learning? We're back after this. Stay with us. You are still watching Expressions, your number one youth current affairs show. We carry on with this very important conversation. Namhlanje on the show, and we are now joined by Alan Khan, who's the DUT spokesperson. Alan, thank you so much for your time and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Alan, now I'd like to know, in your view as DUT management, what is the center, or rather at the center of the student protests?
Funding remains at the center of student protests. That's the reality. The university is not unique in the country. Many other universities who have students who are reliant on funding from the National Students Financial Aid Scheme are facing challenges. So DUT is acting as an agent on behalf of the primary funder, which in this case is the National Students Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, who have the primary responsibility to ensure that there's adequate funding for qualifying and eligible students.
So now, is it true that management is sort of refusing to listen to the cries of the students?
Well, this is certainly not true, because DUT Student Services, as mandated by executive management, has set up various platforms for continuous engagement with students. And this engagement with students and student leadership includes structures such as the multi-role player forum. This is regular engagement sessions which are convened, for example. There's weekly meetings with student housing to discuss accommodation matters. And we also have fairly prompt responses to email queries from student leadership and also individual students. These sessions continue to be constructive, and executive management continues to be receptive to some of the recommendations that are emanating from engagements with the student leadership.
Now, I know you've just touched on having met with the students. Perhaps if you can just briefly give us some of the outcomes from those engagements with the students.
Well, there was several engagements at the start of the year related to registration. There was concern that there's online registration which is taking place as a result of the protocols related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of the challenges that first-time applicants were facing is a lack of access to data and to the internet to complete online registration. We engaged with student leadership. We extended the online registration period by a number of weeks. We then also set up structures to assist first-time entrants who are struggling with online registration, where they contacted us. We then gave them a permit and invited them to come to campus, and we had on-campus, mask-to-mask, physical support, where we had staff members assisting those first-time applicants to complete their online registration process. So there has really been some positives to come out of these engagements already this year.
Now, some of the matters that are lingering out of this conversation is those matters of historical debt. Is it true that some of the students were unable to register this year because of historical debt?
Well, all eligible NSFAS-funded students have been allowed to register despite any historical debt. And all self-paying students who have signed acknowledgement of debt forms with the university and have structured payment arrangements, they will be allowed to register, and many have. It needs to be put out there that all all returning students at DUT have registered for 2021, and our total registration numbers are in excess of 98% for the year. So, the way things stand at the moment, all returning students and those who have historical debt, those who are funded by NSFAS have been cleared and have registered.
Alan, speak to me about how the institution is going to be assisting some learners who might be going through financial difficulties, because I know that we've spoke about COVID many times. So for some of those parents that were hit by this global pandemic, struggling to make ends meet, struggling to make the payments, how are those learners going to be assisted?
Well, as management, we have directed first-time enrolling students to approach NSFAS with their funding applications. At DUT, we have the Siku Sekele We Got You program, where students are also beneficiaries of our response to food insecurity, which remains a very real threat, even pre-COVID times. We had students who are hungry, and there's no ways you're going to learn on an empty stomach. So the university has a program to assist students who are hungry on a daily basis. DUT has a solidarity fund, which is a COVID-19 solidarity fund. This was started last year when the pandemic hit, where a number of our staff and members of management sacrificed a portion of their salaries to go into the fund, which went to assist students. The reality, and you know this, is that COVID-19 has disrupted all of our lives. We are working hard with our staff and students to limit the further spread and negative impact of the disease in the DUT community.
Indeed, and after all is said and done, I think what's very important is that the learners go back to class. So let's speak about when will the academic year at DUT resume?
Well, the academic year is well and truly underway. It's taking place online, and successfully so. The revised university calendar, which was circulated widely, showed that on the 29th of March, which was a Monday, all returning students commenced with the 2021 academic program. And then on Monday, the 12th of April, all first-year students commenced with their studies. It was also online. So there is a commitment from all of our 6 faculties for those students who may have registered late for whatever reason, that there will be catch-up programs so that those students are not compromised during the course of their studies this year.
Alan Khan is the spokesperson for DUT. Thank you so much for your time on Expressions today. And we are closing it up now in Durban. You know what I like about this show is that we get to travel far and wide, because the youth voice is what we represent, and we always have to run with it. Whether it's good or bad, we must have those conversations, and this was a very important conversation that we also needed to have. Guys, I want to thank you so much for braving the elements to come and have this conversation with us. Absolutely. Our job is done here.
Our job is done, and really I just hope that we do find a solution to this particular big problem, because the young people are the future of this country, and we can't have them on the street protesting year in and year out. We need them to be leading this future. We're leading this country forward. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Adios, muchachos.